Okay, so hello. So we are ready. Now let's talk about how to build successful startup ecosystem. We have guests from all over Europe that shared how it look like in countries like Germany, like Estonia, UK, and Israel. So let's start from the question. Some time ago, Bradfeld formulated the so-called Boulder thesis. So four theses how to build successful startup community. So my question is, do you agree that these four parts are important, so that entrepreneurs should be leaders, there should be long-term commitment, inclusiveness, and of course activities engaging the whole community? Or could you add some other points that have great impact for building startup community, maybe from experience in your country?
I think the most important part of this thesis was that the community should be led by entrepreneurs. And unfortunately, here in Europe, we don't have... Closer? Okay, sorry. So I think the most important part of this thesis is that the startup community should be led by entrepreneurs. And unfortunately, entrepreneurs are building their businesses, their first really global and scalable businesses, and they don't have time to build the ecosystems and lead them. So government has a role in that, but together with entrepreneurs, we really can make the difference. We just need to find a way how to include entrepreneurs and support them every step of the way.
Yeah, I think I 100% agree with that. That it's trying to. I think in the London ecosystem, I focus mainly on policy because that's my kind of my shtick. But I sort of 100% believe that it should be about founders, and we were founded by tech entrepreneurs. They sit on our board, and I think that I think Marcus was completely right about how inspiration is vital. Having those sort of people giving back who have been successful, having those role models, and having that kind of connectivity within the community. And that does tend to be led by sort of founders who are sort of socially minded and want to sort of give back, and you get great initiatives and mentoring and all sorts of things going on. I think it should be founder led. And I'm not that familiar with the Bradfeld Boulder thesis, so I can't really comment on that.
I think just supporting my friends here, at the end of the day, it's all about connectivity. So connecting entrepreneurs to institutions, connecting them to multinationals, connecting them to capital. At the end of the day, creating that ecosystem. A lot of this is on the hands and shoulders of government support.
Well, let me support that. It's, you know, if you have people who never built something or who never started something, who never felt that pressure which is put on you if you're getting closer and closer to failure, and you know now we have to do something, I think you can't support these people in the right manner. And that is very, very important. Unfortunately, and that's true, too many people in Europe who say they support the startup community are from other areas, let's say. And even if it's a CEO, you know, we're working very closely with Deutsche Bahn. And I had a long conversation with the CEO there. And I was like, what do you think? What do we need to support entrepreneurs? But you always have to keep in mind that the problems that person has to deal with is so far from the problems you as an entrepreneur have to deal with. That is so differently. So maybe that's not the right person to talk to if you want to figure out how to get investment. You need someone who is way closer to you, and sometimes it's better to find someone who is maybe 6 months ahead of you than someone who is 20 years ahead of you. And that is, again, how I want to say, that's one of the most important things in the startup, or to build a working startup community, a working ecosystem. Get the entrepreneurs and not the advisors, not the mentors.
And the other part, I think, which is really crucial, is that it has to be long-term commitment. You can't make decision based on only 1 year activities. It has to be long term, and you have to understand which needs to be the milestones to reach before actually deciding it doesn't work, we will stop it. Governments need to have they try to have effect, and they try to understand how worth is it trying to do all those things, but you have to give time for that. As Saul mentioned in his presentation, it's a risk-taking culture, and to really support startup ecosystem, it's also risks. And you take the risks and you learn from them, and the next time you will do better. So this is the other most important thing, I think, in there.
Okay, so another important issue is how we can attract startups to incorporate in European hubs like Berlin, London, or Amsterdam, or other cities, instead of moving to Silicon Valley or I don't know, other countries. Maybe you have some examples by government or by your local community that can attract.
In Estonia, from ex-CEO of Skype, Sten Tamkivi, he has built a new product called Teleport. Yesterday also somebody mentioned it, and Teleport gives you opportunity to figure out which would be the best place to start your startup based on living costs, life standard, and all other important things. I don't think you necessarily need to have all the startups in your own country, but they need to be there where their clients are. So the strategy for Estonian startups is to start from Estonia, then go where clients are in US, in West Coast, East Coast, in UK, and they will come back eventually. But to attract talent to a country, you need to be flexible. Your society needs to be ready for foreigners, and all those things, I think, are really, really important.
Over the past few days being here, I realized that Poland has a lot of talent, and I think that it's time for Poland, if I can just looking from aside, to stop a minute and not necessarily always think through the eyes of the European framework. There is capital in Poland, very talented people. There is the right infrastructure regarding universities and research institutes. It's time to think globally, and there is the talent and there is the capital, so just building the right infrastructure and platforms to connect those groups together and support entrepreneurism and innovation within the country. Of course, looking at Poland's hotspots. So, I mean, if, for example, if Homeland Security or clean tech may not be the strongest issues, I'm just saying that, then looking into other sectors that Poland can actually be advantageous in. I think that that approach of always looking into what other European hubs are doing will not get Poland into the right direction, because the approach is globally. And when looking into Asia, for example, that are just starting, they're not comparing themselves to other Asian countries. Korea is doing its thing. Japan has its thing. Same goes for Singapore and Hong Kong. And I think that's the right position for Poland, also to think more independently. And of course, one thing that I can say coming from Israel is always look at how you can support the entrepreneur and innovative ecosystem and help entrepreneurs think globally by trying to connect them regarding scaling up. That's an issue that we confront in Israel, is startups have difficulties thinking of scaling up, and this is where government support can be advantageous.
I think that's right. So I think it's less about where they're going to found and launch, because often they'll found and launch in their home country. The problem I've seen with startups I meet is that as they try and scale and grow, they often will then, in search of capital, in search of people with the right risk appetite, move to the Silicon Valley. So there's a fantastic startup called atTech, founded by a young female entrepreneur. It's a lesbian dating app, because that didn't exist, and you need a specific safe space for that sort of thing, and had this fantastic product, but it was finding it really hard to raise money in London. We went over to Silicon Valley, demoed it and launched it, I think, at one of the sort of TechCrunch Disrupt, one of the big conferences there. Immediately found people who are interested, found lots of users, found money much more easily, and so has relocated her whole business from London to San Francisco. And that's great for her, and she's fantastic, but it's a loss to London and the UK, because there was this innovative company that was doing great things, employing people, that's gone. And it is to do with those sort of cultural things about risk that we touched on in the last question, and about availability of capital, and about how you scale. And I think there are some things you can try and do policy-wise. So in the UK, for example, on the London Stock Exchange, they've introduced a new high-growth segment, which has reduced listing requirements. So if you want to IPO in London, traditionally you have to meet really high standards on sort of the amount of equity you're going to put up as free float, the auditing, all the sort of regulatory requirements for these, to try and encourage high-growth companies to stay and list there. They've lowered some of the barriers. I don't think it's going to have a huge effect, but those are the sort of things around the edges that you can start doing.
Okay.
And I know you guys like it more if we bash each other, and I'll try to do that. I mean, Germany and UK on stage, that should be a good starting point. But I unfortunately can't. I just want to underline what was said already, and maybe add that what I think what is important. Well, first of all, again, focus on your country, on your culture, because what we see a lot in Germany as much as in France, in Spain, and all the other countries, maybe a little less for you in the UK, but it's very heavily US driven what's happening right now. But the culture is very different here in Europe to what's going on in the US. And if you're not able to adapt what's coming from there in terms of inspiration, in terms of role models, whatever, to your local culture, you'll fail, for sure. It's like people will not follow you on a broad scale. So that's one thing which is very important. And then create success stories in the area, in your home area. That is also very important. I mean, the whole Berlin hype after 2000, after the new economy bubble, started with SoundCloud. SoundCloud was coming to Berlin and getting bigger and bigger, so they got a lot of attention again, and that made other entrepreneurs move to Berlin as well and want to start there with their own businesses, and I think that's very, very important to do that.
Okay, so now let's talk about money. So what do you think? Do we have enough smart money in Europe, or the more demand, or the lack of good startups to invest? Because, of course, there are two opinions. And let's talk how to improve the development of business angel market, because, for example, in UK, it's growing rapidly. There are many incentives and tax reliefs, but in other countries, they are still in early stage. So how to attract VC investment for local ecosystem? Maybe you have some good examples or good
So once again, I really resist this. Do not mention just looking through the prism and bandwidth of Europe. You should look into the capital that you have in Poland. And yesterday we visited the NCBR, and we were told of 1 billion capital that is currently under management of BNCR. So there is capital. The question is not capital. And also you have to understand that now is an excellent time to be an entrepreneur globally, because there is plenty of capital. Entrepreneurs need to tap into that capital. Investors are having difficulty because they need to stand out, because of the fact that entrepreneurs are becoming smarter and they know exactly what they want, and they can really play with valuations at this point in time. So regarding capital, there is that. One thing that I think maybe now is a good time to maybe comment. There are important and relevant universities here in Poland, I see. One thing that I would pay attention more when deploying that capital is looking into supporting a technology transfer office ecosystem here, because a lot of innovation stems from licensing technologies from universities, research institutes, and this is something that I think needs to be more developed in Poland and can be more developed through this deployment of capital. thereby creating incubators, spin-offs from academia here in Poland. That's something that can be done.
I think there are two important topics. In Estonia, what we are seeing currently is that everybody wants to invest into startup. I have two apartments in Old Town, and now I have a startup investment. And investments don't go like that. If you are doing stupid investments and are waiting for like high growth from one startup only, it doesn't go like that. You have to have big portfolio, you have to divide your risk, and you can't invest more than 10% of all of your liquid assets into startups because this is really risky segment. So what could happen also here is that you get many really disappointed investors because they don't have the skills how to really invest. And I think money is important, but it's not the most important part. Teams are really important, and teams need good advisors and good connections. So the quality of investors is really, really important. If you get these investors invest into you, what have invested, for example, into TransferWise, and you can have Ben Horowitz on your supervisory board, that's an asset. That brings you new knowledge and new level of understanding the business itself. So focus on really experienced people and try to get them into your ecosystem. Introduce your startups to foreign investors and constantly speak about them, because then everybody knows what's going on here in Poland. And then the capital will come. This is true, believe me. This has happened in Estonia.
And I'm sure not only in Estonia, because what I make it very short. The most creative and best time I ever had in a startup was the time when we didn't have money, because that was when we were really creative and we really tried to solve the problems we had by ourselves and not let that be done by some advisors or anyone else. So that's the only way how you can make sure that you find creative and new innovative ways to solve a problem. And secondly, I underline what you said, Mir, is money is a follower. So if you do something that people like, the money will come anyways. And I recently talked to guys who started number 26 in Berlin, a fintech startup. They got investment from Peter Thiel, I think like $10 million, I'm not sure. And we talked, and he was like, you know, the money we got here, we didn't do a single pitch. You know, Peter Thiel asked us whether we wanted to talk to him. And I think that exactly proves that the money is just a follower if you do great stuff. So focus on the stuff you want to do and not on the money, because, okay, I'm speaking a little longer, sorry for that. But that's what I've learned in Berlin also. It's like you meet so many people who put CEO on their cards and run around and just talk about money. You know, I got that idea, but I need €1 million, I need 2 million euros, 500,000. But these are the guys you meet a year after that, and they still talking about, I just need 1 or 2 million euros, but they never did anything. So the more interesting people are the ones who just start and then reach out when they learn they need more capital to grow or to make that happen, that dream happen they are following.
I don't have a huge amount to add to, I think, like, very wise comments from the other panelists. Other than to say, I think there are like a few tweaks government can make. I think in the UK we've got some good tax breaks, and that helps. But this isn't a problem that government should really be solving that much. There's a role for government, but it's the levers at their disposal are very blunt. And do you really want taxpayers subsidizing VC returns? Not really. Is there really market failure? Not really, as we've said. There is to some extent in some specific gaps, but they're going to get solved. I think it's partly a generational thing. Our ecosystems are all relatively young. Israel is older and has a more mature VC scene, but even sort of London and Berlin are relatively young digital sort of startup ecosystems, and it takes time. You need to get those big exits. You need to get those sort of people like the Skype mafia, who, like the PayPal mafia in turn, have gone on to sort of found lots of other companies and become investors. And we'll see that increasingly in all our ecosystems and your own. You're sort of getting Polish exits. I think Boris there. we're seeing Polish startups exit, and then you get a serial sort of virtuous circle where founders become angels. This is also signaling to external VCs that, oh, something interesting is going on in this place, we should go and have a look at it. And the proof is here. We've got this fantastic conference where you've got awesome sort of VCs and founders and investors coming to have a look at what's going on. So I think, yeah, I wouldn't worry about there not being enough money. There is a lot of money around. Obviously, it'd be better if there were more, but keep going. And I'm fully subscribed for the lean startup method of just, crack on rather than sitting around waiting for someone to write you a check.
Okay. In Poland, many people are waiting for the first unicorn. So, from your experience, what's the real impact of creating the unicorns for development of local startup ecosystem? In Berlin, you have SoundCloud, recently big investments in Wunderlist by Microsoft. In Estonia, you have Skype. In Poland, we are also looking for our Skype, Google, or Facebook. But is it important for development to have such a big exits or companies valued over $1 billion?
I think these kind of success stories are very important to drive an ecosystem. It's not the most important thing maybe, but especially if you are in your early days, it's important. Otherwise, nothing's going to happen. And when Poland will, or what does it take to create one of these unicorns? I think it's very easy. Right team, right time, and a lot of luck.
So I have to disagree with my German colleague because, if you look at the statistics, even looking into venture capital, 1% of all investments actually even fit a VC type of investment. And the statistics in general, for startups to succeed are very, very slim. You want traction. You want startups to start to grow, to, raise capital, and you want the ecosystem to take shape. And if you look into Israel, maybe we have some sexy stories that you can tell investors, but at the end of the day, most of the VCs, you see exits of $100 million US, somewhere in that range, and that's good for investors. You want more of those than just one unicorn sexy story. So for those entrepreneurs sitting in the crowd, don't think at all about you being one day that unicorn. That's too much pressure. I mean, look in the short milestones that you have. Work on those technical obstacles that you have. Think of strategic partners, JVs, piloting, prototyping. These are the milestones that I would, as an investor, want you to think of if you would be like one of the startups that I would be investing in. The question if you will be one day a unicorn, that would not interest me specifically as an investor because that's too far in the future. Like he said, that's a lot of luck. If that happens, that's good, but don't waste your time thinking if you'll be the next unicorn.
Yeah, I agree on that. David Hinrikus and Christo Kärman, who are the founders of TransferWise, and they are named as one of the unicorns now in the world, they are constantly saying that it is really annoying to hear all the questions about journalists, when will we sell our company? It's not about it. They are trying to build really big company, and it takes a lot of effort. Some of the people don't have families after the journey, and you need to have the right focus. So unicorn status is a result, not like an everyday process you need to think of. So I agree with Saul, but also with you that team and luck and right timing, because the timing is the most important one. Sometimes the market is not ready, but you have to understand where your market is. So concentrate on your market and your clients' needs, and the rest of it will come.
So I'm a bit of a hypocrite because I started my presentation by saying, "Woo! Look at London. We've got 17 unicorns. Aren't we amazing?" And of course, that's not the whole story and doesn't really matter that much. What it matters for is signaling. I think it's like it's about that. It's both about signaling and about the sort of knock-on effects you get from it. So, from the signaling point of view, it's so that you're now getting far more US investors, you're getting Chinese investors, you're getting Asian investors coming over and saying you can invest in European startups. We are good at this. There are fantastic case studies and role models and inspiration. And then there is also the knock-on effect of having that on local ecosystems, because it means you then get lots of pull for talent. So you get more developers going into that local area. You get all the service professionals that go alongside it, sort of marketing, legal, all the other stuff that goes along with it. And so there is value in sort of celebrating unicorns and having them, but it is just a number that's quite meaningless and is more about PR than about some real success. As Saul said, getting to those sort of earlier benchmarks of like $100 million is still a huge company that you'll have done very well to build, and that will have rewarded your investors, you as a founder, and your early employees will all be very happy, I think, with an exit or valuation at that sort of level. So let's not fetishize unicorns. And there have been lots of great VC blog posts recently about, like, I think it's saying let's hunt dragons, not unicorns or something, and sort of coming up with other terminology for different sort of sizes of startup. So I don't think the unicorn is the be all or end all.
Okay. So the last questions are. Okay, we are running out of time. But it starts 5 minutes later. Maybe some extra time for questions or the last one.
No, I have to get back on track per organization. So I give you 2 minutes, and that's the most I can give.
Okay. So any questions from the audience?
Oh yeah, so if there's anyone who wants to actually take another question from the audience.
Okay, we have one question.
Where is the question? Here.
From
Go ahead.
Kamil.
So you talked a lot how national governments can help with taxes for investors, but how local governments can help to create the local communities, the local entrepreneurship communities.
I thank you for your question, and I think from my feeling, I think that goes the wrong way down, what's behind that question, because it's not, and that's what I strongly believe in, it's not the governments who should build that. The governments can support that, but the good thing about democracies is that you guys can change something, and if you think it's the right time and you really want to do something in that direction, just start it. Again, it's like the government will follow anyways as soon as they understand that there's something important going on, and you have to get enough traction to make them understand. But from my point of view, and especially in the startup community, it does not depend on anyone else but you and every one of you who wants to start something here. And I know that sounds very visionary and stuff like that, but that is exactly what it takes. Find the right people who follow the same vision than you have, and then make sure that that happens.
Very, very quick, because I know we're out of time, but just I agree that governments can't create something, but I think they can get behind something and blow on the embers of something that's there. And we clearly have that here in Warsaw and in Krakow. I think government does make a difference, though, and the city is really interesting. You asked about local government, because I think the city is the right unit of analysis to think about this, because we've all talked about our countries, and it's really, we're not talking about our countries, we're talking about clusters within those countries, and it's Tel Aviv and Haifa, and it's London and Cambridge, and the city is the right one. So where you get often elected mayors can be the great champion within that, because they are the sort of the voice of the city. So I think getting local government, getting your mayor on side to do things like champion the sector, come to events and shout about it, because that PR, that sort of championing, could be more important than any of the actual policy decisions they make.
Saul, you have the last word.
Okay, I would just recommend that, you always see, even the fastest governments are slow governments. I would be very proactive if I were you. Just create a meetup group, like call it post Bitspiration, with some of the people that you connected here, and maybe get some more names from Startup Poland, create an event, raise an issue that's of interest to you, and just follow from there, you know, raise questions and begin a dialogue. And from there things emerge, and you'll see that government will, you know, tag along and will want to, you know, try and support you as best as possible. If you know, hopefully that will be the case. So good luck.
And on that, Mary, gentlemen, thank you very much. You can applaud them, yes, please.